yang, your soulmate. You get married, life is great. There's only one issue. You or your spouse is a non-US citizen. And in order for them to obtain a path to a green card or even citizenship, you must apply and go through a marriage interview with USCIS to ensure that the marriage is genuine. With me today to help people prepare for their marriage interviews, Spar and Bernstein immigration attorney and partner, Shannon LaGuerre-Maingrette. Shannon, how are you, girl?
I'm good. How are you, Vanessa?
Awesome. Let's jump right into it because I know the squad needs all the info on this one. When should a couple start preparing for their marriage interview?
I believe that they should start interviewing as soon as possible. So I tell a lot of the clients, they come in even before they get married, which is great. They should really start looking to prepare even before marriage. So I give them tips such as make sure that you have pictures together, like while you were dating. Make sure that you have pictures at the wedding, that you have family and friends. Not a necessity to have a big wedding because some people are like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, no, you don't have to have a big wedding, but you need to show that you celebrate it and that you show some level of respect and decorum. It's a huge moment in your life. I've had cases where they have looked at what the people were wearing to the marriage ceremony. So somebody had worn short and they commented on that in the decision. So it's really, really important to really respect the whole moment of getting married. So before marriage, during the marriage ceremony, and also marriage, that you want to make sure that you have documents to show that you were together.
Now, what should people have or not have posted on social?
Social media is a new concept that's going on with immigration. Really, really interesting. I tell people, be careful about social media for so many different reasons. The officers do go on. They'll go on to your social media page and look to see. I've had clients, they have each other on each other's pages, which is wonderful. Also, that basically shows to the officer, like, okay, I see family. I see that they're posting to one another. They're basically tagging one another. And these are things that the officers look at. I also tell people to be careful too because of the phone. So I've had experience where I was in Boston last year and it was a marriage interview. The officer was wonderful. The officer's just talking, vibing with the clients. And then it seems like they went to a vacation spot in the US that also the officer had gone to. So the officer's like, oh, asking questions about that particular vacation spot. And then he's like, do you have pictures? And he was like, let me see your phone. And then she takes out her phone and I was like, I hope she has pictures. And she did. But imagine if they were conversing and this was like a lie. And then he's asking for pictures and they didn't have the pictures on either phone. That would have been problematic because everyone's taking pictures on their phone. So I tell people social media and also pictures on your phone are very, very important because the officers will ask for it. And at that point, basically, you don't want to be placed in a situation where you don't have it. I had a situation where it was imperative to show that there was not a relationship with someone else because my client kept on admitting, like, I don't know who that person is. I never met that person. And they had already gone on social media and saw that when she had gone out of the country, that they were friends on social media. It was Facebook, actually. Oh, wow. And that she had commented and they had corresponded back and forth. And at that point, obviously my client was in a situation.
How else can people prove to immigration that they are in a real bona fide marriage?
So I'm just going to give you like a list of things people should probably have. A joint bank accounts together, bills in both their names. Of course, pictures are what people usually come in with. If either spouse have children, those stepchildren or whatever the case may be, you should have basically to show that in case of emergency that each person can go and pick up that child. So for example, if the US citizen is the step parent, have that step parent be on in case of emergency notification. Also, if you're working, in case of emergency, contact my spouse because in case of emergency, God forbid something happens to us at work, you want your job to contact someone that's real, someone that's going to be there for you and going to make really good decisions on your behalf. You're not going to put someone that's you're in a fraudulent relationship with. So they do look at that. So I tell people bills such as cable bills, you can also have telephone bills. Those are really important documents to show. But again, every marriage is different, right? Not everybody's going to have all these documents and you have to be very creative at that particular time. There are times that people don't have good credit and so they can't get a lot of bills in their names or even both names at that point. Anything coming to the address. So basically if you have magazines or even junk mail coming into the address, you can certainly use that to show, yes, I may not have good credit, and that's why I may not be able to have these bills in my name, but here's documentation to show that basically I live at this address with my spouse.
And what if a couple doesn't have a joint account?
If they don't have a joint account, I tell people you have to be able to explain. So there's so many different reasons why people don't have a joint account. Basically, it could be credit situations, and then you could just show the bank stating that you made the request for your partner to be placed on a joint account and they refuse. Immigration will accept that, right? Because they see that you were making the effort to do that. There are other reasons. Sometimes basically there's lawsuits out there where they can collect and they don't want their bank account to be garnished. And then at that point, basically you present the information. Like, it's all about plausible explanations. Why can't you do this? They just want you to be able to explain it. So if you can't do the joint bank account, you have to demonstrate that you are dividing the financial responsibilities in a way. So everybody's contributing. It's not just the person getting the green card, but everybody's contributing. And that is very important.
Now let's discuss the marriage interview itself.
Mm-hmm.
Where are they usually held?
It depends on what process. So for example, if you are in your home country and you're getting the green card, that is called consular processing. That will be done at a U.S. consulate or U.S. embassy. The interview will be conducted there. And if you are in the United States and you are requesting to, be granted a green card, then at that point, basically that is called an adjustment of status. And that will be conducted at United States Citizenship and Immigration Services, usually a field office. The interview will be conducted there.
And what should people expect at their interview?
So expect to wait a while. Usually you're going to wait, depending on where you are, but like someplace like New York, Florida, Boston, you'll be waiting a little bit of time. So you're looking at probably, if it's like an hour, don't be astonished by that. Once you get into the interview, the officer will question you pertaining to background information. Where were you born? Your background, family information, parents information. Do you have children? When did you get married? Are there any previous marriages that they need to be aware of? At that point, they're also asking for documentation. So proof of identity, any divorce decrees, annulment certificates that they need to be aware of. And then you're providing the original documents at that particular time. Then they'll proceed. Again, it depends on where you are. They'll question you about the marriage, and depends on where you are because there may be a next step. And at that point, the officer will tell you that they will issue a decision and you're waiting.
Now, we play Bratified Marriage on our show, which is like the Newlywed Game, but using Stoke interview questions. Can you explain to those who may not know what a Stokes interview is?
A Stokes interview basically is a marriage interview where the officer separates you. In New York, they are kind enough to actually give you a heads up. So you'll go into an initial marriage interview. They'll question the both of you, just like we just talked about. And at that point, if the officer is uncomfortable and doesn't feel like they can grant it, they will then send you another interview notice for a Stokes interview where they will separate you. In other jurisdictions, you should go in there prepared for them to separate you. So many times, like in Alabama, Florida, Jersey, as soon as you walk in, they're separating you. So you should be prepared for that. They ask you a series of questions. It can be anywhere from 30 minutes all the way up to 2 hours. I think the longest Stoke interview I had was 3.5 hours, over literally 320 questions. So normally what I'm doing when I'm sitting in the interview is I'm writing down all the questions and responses, because the way it works is that they'll ask one spouse a series of questions, and then that person will step out. The second spouse will come in and they'll ask the same questions again. Then both will come in front of the officer and they'll basically look at the answers. And if there were any discrepancies, then at that point they need to address it.
You mentioned that sometimes in the Stoke interview, there's hundreds and hundreds of questions. But what are some questions that interviewers should expect?
I mean, it's so many different questions. Those that are really simple, like a married couple should know. For example, where did you first meet? When did you meet? Where was your first date? If either one has children, when did you introduce, the other to your child or to your children? Meeting of parents are questions that are also asked. I think the questions that can be, much more detailed. And I tell people, hey, the reality is that you're married and you're going through everyday life. People who are really married understand it's like the hustle and bustle of marriage. And there are things that you may not look at. So they'll ask you, what color is your husband's toothbrush. I understand that my husband brushed his teeth this morning, but like, I don't remember the color of his toothbrush. But these are things that I don't have to pay attention to, but someone who's actually requesting a green card do need to pay attention to those. So it's really important, like some of these questions, the color of toothbrushes, how many pillows are on the bed, how many pillows do you sleep on, how many pillows does your husband or your wife sleep on, what are the color of the sheet, when was the last time the sheets were changed, where is the hamper, which is, I think, a great question. Some people get caught that way. Some people will be like, oh, it's in the bathroom, and other people will be like, no, it's in the closet. If you're living together, then you should know the answer to these questions. But a lot of times you need to be reminded and prepared for it. Sometimes the questions can be somewhat, I would say, a little invasive. So they may ask you what type of birth control you're using, if any, right? Other times they'll ask, hey, what did your spouse wear to bed last night? And I've had, people be like, well, they went to bed naked. I mean, they ask the question because they want to be able to see whether or not it's the same answer.
And are U.S. citizen spouses expected to attend the marriage interview?
It depends on the type of interview. So if you're getting your green card abroad, which is the consular processing that we talked about, that particular visa, the U.S. citizen is not expected to be at the interview. Only a few instances have I had it where the officer would request after the interview that the U.S. citizen appear. Only a few. Here in the United States, the answer is yes, they are expected to appear at the adjustment of status interview.
And now, when do people usually hear the result of their interview?
So usually the officers will tell you as soon as the interview's all over, please give us 120 days for this to be completed. There's a lot of work that goes into this. I mean, they need to basically do background checks, security clearances. The officers are getting up to 10 cases a day, and some of them can be very, very complicated. Therefore, they need the time to be able to assess all of this information before giving an answer. If 120 days does pass by, then at that point, you should really reach out to your attorney.
And what happens if a couple is denied after their marriage interview?
A lot of times if they are denied after a marriage interview, you can do a motion to reopen or reconsider. I usually more than likely tell people to refile because I feel it's easier. And also work permit is a huge issue for a lot of clients. The beneficiaries, they need their work permit to work. And if you do a motion to reopen or reconsider, you're not eligible for a work permit. So a lot of times I'll tell them to refile, and then you have an opportunity to be able to present the case all over again to an officer.
Now, Shannon, you've handled hundreds of marriage cases. Can you tell me about a tricky case you've handled where the interview went badly, but you were able to prove the couple was in a bona fide marriage?
Many times couples will go to an interview and you can totally tell that the officer is like, I'm not going to grant this, or I need some time, or you'll get a decision from us, but you could tell that the officer is not comfortable. And so in this particular circumstance, the couple first initial interview, it was in New York. There were some discrepancies. It wasn't a Stokes interview. It was actually a marriage interview. At that point, basically, fraud detection unit for USCIS went to the marital home to investigate. They showed their badges, and the couple was living with the U.S. citizen wife aunt. Basically, they showed pictures because you take pictures, passport size photos, and you submit it with the applications. And they showed these pictures and they were like, do you know this person? So the aunt was like, oh yeah, I know my niece. That's my niece, right? And then they showed her husband, and the aunt was like scared and said, I've never seen him before. At that point, the officers are like, okay, so have you ever seen him around? I mean, and she's like, no. They asked about the U.S. citizen wife, the niece, basically, is she married? And she's like, I'm not sure. And later on, I was like, why did the aunt say that? People are very afraid to speak to police officers. And she felt that maybe he got in trouble, and here are the police who are basically trying to get information in order to arrest him. And she wanted no part of this. That's why she said she didn't know him. I basically argued that this was the situation. There were tons of newspaper articles that talked about this particular urban area and what was going on with the community and the police and the fear that exists and with gangs, etc. They went back again for another interview, and they actually did very well. And there was so many other evidence that I was able to get from them. And it's crazy. The beneficiary, which was the person getting the green card, had been robbed 2 blocks away from where he lives with his wife. So that was evidence that I showed that there was a police report, and he was like, I was walking home and I was robbed. And at that point, again, it shows like, why would he be in the neighborhood? He actually used that address as his home address. And so we went back in again, they did the interview, and they were granted. Now he's actually a U.S. citizen. it's all about being able to get the full story and being able to explain a plausible explanation that it's credible and consistent when you provide this explanation.
Yes, Shannon, digging, love it. Squad C, thank you so much for the information, Shannon. Our attorneys here at Spar and Bernstein are always open to work for you. So they will get the case answered. To get in touch with Shannon or any of our other talented attorneys here at Spar and Bernstein, call 1-800-529-5465. That's 1-800-529-5465.
Thanks for watching. For more Brad Show Live, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.